Hello, and welcome to this episode of Inside Legal ESG. My name is Pam Cone, and I work with Amity Advisory and Inside Practice, and it's my pleasure to host this podcast series. Today, we are so delighted to have with us Sara Magneli. She's the ESG Counsel at Cederquist in Stockholm, Sweden. We're going to learn all about her career path and also what roles she fulfills at Cederquist. Welcome, Sara. We're so excited to have you here today.
Thank you, Pam, and it's great to join you finally. It's really nice to
finally we're together. So let's start with, give us a description of Cederquist and what it is, what you do, and the work you do there.
Of course. So Cederquist is a Swedish Stockholm-based law firm. We have been active for a bit over 70 years, and we are around 160, 170 employees, and we're all based as sort of one team under one roof in Stockholm. And we are a full-service business law firm, but with a quite strong focus on transactions. So that's the core, but we have sort of all areas within business law except for tax law.
And tell me what role you have at Cederquist.
So my current role is I'm the first and only ESG Counsel. So we have a number of counsels at Cederquist, but I have this new title and role as ESG Counsel, where I have the overall responsibility for ESG and sustainability law. And I'm also, together with a colleague, heading our firm-wide ESG team that we have. We have an ESG team that consists of members from all of our practice group at the law firm. So we have sort of recognized that this is an area that spans over all areas of law, and so we have this core group, and it's also an area that's sort of a lot of colleagues find interesting. So it's open to anyone who wants to join in on our when we have capacity building lunches and that type of things. So it's like a core team, but open for everyone.
And does that group also work on Cederquist's own ESG practices and programs and policies, et cetera, or is that a separate team?
That is sort of, we also have in-house roles that are present in the group, but it's mainly for focusing on client work.
And was this a new position for Cederquist? I know you said it's a new position for you, but had it been filled before, or is it a newly created position?
It's a newly created position, so it's sort of it was created as, or I was given a title for the work that I was doing, so to speak. So a bit, since it's sorry.
Go ahead, finish.
No, since it's a bit of a new area, so it's we have counsel as a role, but not we haven't had an ESG counsel before.
So tell us a little bit about your career path and what brought you to this role and this passion and this type of work.
Of course, yeah. I actually started out in another area of law. I started out at another law firm here in Stockholm, and that was 14 years ago now. So I started out working more with strategic contracts, media, entertainment, but also quite a lot of focus on compliance issues, privacy, and anti-corruption. So I had sort of this interest in compliance as a part of that practice, and I was there for around 3 years, and then I did court service. So I was a year and a half working the court here in outside of Stockholm, and then I found the sort of next step in my career to be litigation or dispute resolution. So that was one of the things that I sort of discovered being in courts. So I started, so I switched firm to Cederquist, and this is 9 years ago, almost exactly now. So I started out at Cederquist in the dispute resolution group, which I am also still a part of. So that's sort of one part of my practice. And there we also have one of the partners that is responsible for compliance, sustainability, and also a lot of internal investigations. And risk management. So I've been working with her and with others in the firm also with these compliance areas during my time here. And that's sort of where this has grown out of, as we've seen it sort of as an extension to current or previous compliance areas. So also having sort of privately an interest in sustainability matters. That was something that I saw after a while, that, okay, so I can actually combine these things with this new area of law that is developing, not least in the EU. So that was something that we started building number of years ago now, but when things started moving in the EU. So that's sort of where this new role developed from.
And you talked about how things started to develop and move forward in the EU. Obviously, you can't have this conversation without talking about the omnibus and what you think about that.
They're still moving.
About trends, ESG trends in Sweden, and more broadly, ESG trends in EU, and what your perspective is on those.
Well, I think this is one of the things that has been sort of present all the way through, that it's moving all the time and it's moving really fast. First, it was moving mainly forwards and upwards. And now we have, we met last time in November, and it's, a lot of things have happened since then, not least with the omnibus. And we were talking then about, because you could see already a bit further back that it's been talk about an ESG backlash, but then it was maybe more a US trend. I think we're also definitely seeing this more in, or maybe not a backlash, but a bit of a setback, maybe, and a shift of focus. Being that, I mean, there's a lot of things going on in the world. There's political shifts and geopolitical instability, and there's a lot of fragmentation in the world. So we're seeing a lot of sort of polarized perspectives on these issues. And there's a lot of focus now in the EU, more on sort of building or bettering EU companies' competitiveness. They're talking about decluttering, and there's another rhetoric around these issues. And with the omnibus, now we have had the vote just last week on the stop the clock proposal. So there's a pause, first of all, on some very core legislation with the CSRD, the reporting obligations, and also the CS triple D that was already a bit of a drama in the EU when the legislative process was going on. So now we have everything is sort of being pushed forward, so that they will also be able to sort of they're talking about streamlining it and seeing looking into the scope of which companies will be covered by reporting obligations, how far do companies need to go in these efforts. So I think we will see definitely a bit of sort of a setback, or these issues will be the regulatory burden will be lowered going forward.
And so part of the pause is to give time to make those adjustments. How long is the pause predicted to be? Is it just like a 2-year pushback, or is you're smiling, so that must be a loaded question?
No, I mean the pause of the application of these, I mean the CSRD for the companies that are not already reporting will be pushed forward 2 years. And then for CSDDD, they have postponed both for the member states to implement those rules with a year, and then that follows. So it's a year, pushed forward a year for each group that would be applied or start applying those rules. And then when it comes to CSRD with the reporting rules, it could be that the companies that were supposed to start reporting then 2 years ahead will not be covered in the end. We don't know that yet, because that's part of the looking into the actual material rules that will be discussed going forward. And how long that will take, sort of the negotiation of the actual content, we don't know really yet, but I think the aim is to sort of have these proposals and start having negotiations done during this year. They're really trying to move forward fast in these questions.
And so are you seeing amongst your client base, or just amongst companies in general, that there are some that are continuing the course, and regardless of whether it's required or not, they're continuing to track the data and have metrics, so that when they are required to report, they'll be ready because they've been doing it all along? That's one type. And the other type, I would assume, is, oh, well, let's just put everything on hold here at the company because we don't know if we're even going to be required to do this. And therefore, we're not going to invest any resources until we know for sure. What are you seeing as far as reaction by companies?
I think it differs a bit. And I think during this time of sort of uncertainty, a lot of the people that I have been talking to are sort of keeping up the work and continuing to make the efforts, especially when it comes to, as you said, I mean, you have a lot of data to process, regardless of what type of framework you're in, to sort of continue to work on securing that you have the data that you need and the quality of that data, maybe focusing a bit more on those aspects. But then I think there will be, of course, also a shift. And I know some companies talked about they continue this until the end of this year, and then they will probably sort of flatten out a bit. But I think it depends on also where you started from. So what kind of focus you had on these issues before, and where your starting position was. Because I think that for some companies, they also realize that this is something that is actually quite useful to dig into a bit more deeper. And that it's still material and strategically important topics. And there are other demands and expectations than from the legislators. So we're seeing this from investors. If you're in public procurement and you have the Swedish regions as your customers, they will still have certain requirements. For example, and also the scrutiny from other stakeholders. That will not disappear. I think that will probably even be tougher because of lesser regulatory burden. So,
yep, I completely agree. And I also feel like when the regulations do become in effect again, it's a long process to get ready to report on what it is they're requiring. So stopping and starting is almost going to be more work than just staying the course and being ready and showing your commitment to all of your stakeholders, regardless of when the regulations are going to require it.
Definitely. And also I think with the, as we talked about the geopolitical uncertainties and all of these things, if you have your value chain and you look at your suppliers, and it's also, I mean, it sort of goes hand in hand with ensuring that you have resilience. Also, if you look at certain of these issues, so these are not sort of isolated topics. They go into your core business as well, and can be very useful either way. So, but I think another trend, just to sort of get back to that, is also that since there will be such fragmentation and that there is a backlash and sort of in some areas of the world, ESG will sort of still be sort of thriving, and in some other places it's definitely under attack. I think we will see a lot more of sort of ESG hushing. We were talking about that before with the greenwashing and green hushing, and I think that maybe some companies will sort of not be as vocal even though they do are devoted and have put a lot of effort into these issues. They might still not be as vocal about it. That's another thing that I think we will see more of, depending on where your presence is, of course. Definitely when it comes to the US.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's so true. That there are so many companies that are continuing to do the work for all the reasons you mentioned. This is actually good for business, and it's good for you to assess the strategic risk associated with ESG components. But they're just not going to celebrate it. That's the way I put it. They're not going to celebrate it on their website, and they're not going to be out and about speaking about it. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're stopping what that work is, because if it's core to the business and it's material, it would be bad practice to ignore it just because of political pressure. But I think we will see a lot of green hushing. Anything coming out of Sweden that our audience should know about? What are the trends there? What are people talking about ESG in Sweden?
Well, I think ESG in Sweden is a lot of ESG in the EU, so it's quite the same. And I remember last time we spoke, we talked about because then we had just been sort of implementing CSRD, and as I mentioned already back then, we do see this sort of political shift also in Sweden, and that there is, I think Sweden is not in the forefront anymore. We might have been a bit more, but when it comes to, we don't over-implement, so there's no gold plating when it comes to the EU directives. We're doing it sort of minimum standard. So that's something that's that can be definitely seen in Sweden. But otherwise, I would say that it's definitely following the EU trends quite a lot.
So my next question, you may have touched on some of this already, but I'm just going to ask the question directly. What are you seeing as the greatest challenges for your clients or companies in general when it comes to ESG? And again, we might have touched on some of this already, but focusing on if you were a general counsel inside a multinational organization, what would be on your chart for things to worry about?
Well, definitely this legal uncertainty that is currently ongoing, and that, I mean, the time frames are really tight when it comes to first you have something that's supposed to be ready and that you're supposed to be able to apply it. And there's a lack of guidance to a lot of these. Then that's been one of the critiques from a lot of stakeholders when it comes to opening up all of these legislative acts again and renegotiating, that it's better to get guidance on how to implement than sort of redoing it. But I think one thing that's important and a good thing that might come out of this is to be able to sort of focus more, even more on your actual material issues, because it can also be a bit scattered when you have too many new things going on. And people have been talking, I mean, it's all about these data points, for example, in the reporting standards, but it's sort of, to get the attention on that, you actually still need to work on your material issues and focus more on those, and not get carried away by. This is also something that's we have been discussing in terms of social media for companies, for example, that it's really easy to be scrutinized on topics that are quite irrelevant for your business. It's not your core questions, but you're sort of there are still some that demand you to sort of have an opinion on very issues that are really off topic for your business. And then for global businesses, I think this global fragmentation will be a challenge, definitely. To navigate. That's always been difficult, but it's going to be even more difficult.
Your earlier point about changing all the time, things are changing rapidly now, that even if you think you know how to move forward today, that may very well be different tomorrow based on what happens. And I think that will be a huge problem for all companies until and unless things settle down. So prediction question. If you and I sit down for another podcast in a year from now, what will we be talking about?
Where things have landed.
Let's hope they have landed by then, right? Let's hope they have landed by then.
Or where they are at that specific point in time, at least. I think a lot will, as I said, we spoke last in November. Now it's April. It's like it's been a lifetime. That's passed. I think it's going to be a bit the same if we speak again in a year from now. But hopefully, I think some things will have sort of settled down a bit more, and that you get more clarity and also guidance from regulators and from governments on certain issues that are quite difficult to deal with without it. So hopefully a bit more geopolitically stable as well.
Well, that sounds very hopeful. And my last,
I'm optimistic.
Exactly. My last question of all my guests is this: given the headwinds of ESG, especially over the last 5 to 6 months, what gives you hope? Why are we still working in this space?
I think for me, I think there's a good amount of sort of reasonable and brave people out there that are still going to be working and fighting for what's really important. So I think that's something that gives me hope.
Yes, there are a lot of us in this camp, isn't there? Yeah. So with that, we will wrap it up. Thank you so much for your insights today, Sara. It's been a great conversation, and I'm sure our audience has learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pam.